Coming to you live from the Iceberg Lounge, it is the Hand Plus podcast, where each week I, Joseph Ricky, and my co host Tristan Mayer break down this week in streaming. We give you the news, we talk about reviews, anything really involved in streaming, whether it's a trailer that drops or anything. And this is going to be a jam packed week. We got Star Wars Celebration this last weekend. Plus, I was just talking about it with Tristan before the episode started. It felt like HBO Max, which is now just Max, something else we're going to talk about, essentially had their own like little mini online convention, just dropping a massive amount of news for us to talk about. Plus, we also have some things Tristan and I watched, some things we think you can either watch or things you can maybe skip. And I have one that's on a service some of you may have never even heard of that I think is the most underrated show on television right now. Can't wait to tell everyone about it. Tristan, how was your week in streaming?
It was a crazy week. Yeah, you mentioned that there was not just Star Wars Celebration. There was this massive like HBO Max. Or maybe it's just Max now. Are we not supposed to say HBO? Is that a dirty word? We can't even tell. How are we gonna do the Ham Plus now, Joe? Are we gonna be the Ham? We gotta fit Max in there somewhere. We gotta see what we're gonna do with the acronym, I guess. But yeah, uh, I'm happy with. I'm happy with the week in streaming. There was a lot to watch, a lot to talk about, so it'll be a good one. And I believe you're maybe muted because I can't hear what you just said.
All right, so I am going to. Looks like I am not muted. Hopefully, uh, I am going to tell Tristan in the private chat I'm not muted.
I can hear you now,
All
so
right,
you're good.
all
Might
right,
have just like not came in for a few seconds there.
all right. So it looks like we're off to a great start, technical wise. Let's kick it off with Hulu. A little bit of news, and I watched something else, and we will talk about that as soon as I get that document up because I was not prepared. All right, Hulu news. American Horror Story adds Emma Roberts, and Kim Kardashian potentially as season leads. Tristan, you're an American Horror Story fan. I've seen like two total episodes. So is this something you care about? We've seen Kim Kardashian act a couple of times, and she's always horrendous. So
Yeah, I think she'll be an interesting addition to this. I hope that they kind of lean into the ridiculousness of it. I hope she's not like truly trying to give a good performance because that might be too much to watch. But I feel like if it's campy and it's goofy, I could see a lot of fun with that. I don't really know what the season of American Horror Story is going to be. They don't really announce the theme or the premise of these seasons usually until like it starts or like a couple of days before. So you don't even really know what it's going to be about until you watch it. So we'll see how they nail the crazy casting here. But I love this show. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Emma Roberts has been in this show a couple of times before in some previous seasons. She was in the witch season early on in the show ish. So I'm excited to see her come back and be a lead here. So I'm really curious to see how this casting pays off, and I'm really excited to watch this season of the show.
all right, yeah, I'm glad you're excited for it. I'm probably not gonna watch it. It would take some insane reviews to probably get me to watch it. But I am. I'm happy for people that are fans of this show that it just keeps coming out. As far as
This is, I think, the 12th season of American Horror Story, not counting a couple of spin-offs here and there and a couple of other spin-offs here and there.
yeah, it's just a bunch of spin-offs. It is what it is. I'm not going to watch it, but we just wanted to break the news down for anyone that cares about this franchise still. And as far as what I watched, Tristan, I don't believe you watched anything on Hulu this week, but I actually watched the two-part documentary Pretty Baby, which is about kind of she narrates it, Brooke Shields, and about her life, early life growing up in Hollywood, as she was basically a sex symbol from the time she was a very young child. Basically, from the time she was a toddler, she was a sex symbol playing these sexualized children in these Italian movies, and then she went on to be in Blue Lagoon, where she was a teenager, and like had a big sexualized coming of age story, and kind of her life and how she didn't really realize it at the time or didn't really feel it at the time, but how it like basically warped her mentality and messed with her mind. And it was interesting because they had people like Drew Barrymore, who like knew Brooke Shields in passing, talk about it. And you could also, if you know much about her growing up, being like Drew Barrymore being 5 years old in Studio 54 and stuff, where they had very similar upbringings in that way. But it was kind of how Brooke Shields' mom was just let her kind of doing whatever. Well, she just sat back and partied. And if you're kind of like a fan, I guess, of Hollywood or fan of these kind of Hollywood stories, I definitely think it's worth checking out. I think it was really well done. Obviously, Brooke Shields being a part of it helped. You got the real, authentic story. You didn't feel like, oh, this is going out against her wishes, or you don't have to feel like dirty and gross watching it. Besides the content actually being dirty and gross. But Tristan, have you heard about this? Do you have any interest in this?
Yeah, I hadn't heard about this until you started covering it here in the episode, but I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm definitely happy that you, like you said, it. Sometimes these types of documentaries can feel really exploitative and gross to watch. Like you don't really feel like it's in the best wishes of the person it's about, but it sounds like this is definitely, her story from her perspective. So I'm definitely interested in checking it out.
Yeah, like there was one moment where she was talking about how she was like 16, 17 years old and the director wanted her to like scream in ecstasy, but she's like 16, 17, she has like no idea what that feeling is. So he just starts like as she's like kissing the other actor, just starts like pulling on her toes and twisting her toes to get her to like scream. And it's
Wow,
just
that's pretty bad.
it just sounds extremely messed up and deranged. But like I said, if that seems like a topic that would interest you, I think it's a very well made documentary. It's like a 2-part, maybe 3-part documentary. I think it's worth checking out.
Is that like a Hulu original documentary then?
Yeah, it's a Hulu. It might be like a co-production where it released on Hulu and somewhere else at the same time, but it's like brand new. It just came out like this
All right.
week. Um, all right, so over to Hulu, or over from Hulu over to Amazon. Tristan, I know there's a couple recent movies you watched. This one you watched on Amazon Prime. I think you also watched it in theaters, and I watched it in theaters as well. And that's Creed 3. Movie that I feel like because of some news stories went away rather quickly as far as from the conversation. People felt a little gross maybe talking about it, so I think it very quickly just disappeared. But what are your kind of quick thoughts on Creed 3?
Yeah, when it came out, it would definitely kind of hit so hard for at first, because it was like everyone was talking about it and people were really excited about, particularly Michael B. Jordan's direction. And I feel like that's something I definitely want to focus the conversation on. Is more so I was very impressed with his debut as a director, and I think there was some lacking parts of the script. I feel like the story was a little bit, predictable from the first like 10 seconds of the movie. You can pretty much beat for beat say exactly how it's going to happen and when it's going to happen, and that kind of like takes a lot of the emotional weight out of some of those story beats. But I think as a director, it was very impressive. I thought he brought a lot of visual flair to it and a lot of interesting influences. You know that Michael B. Jordan is a big fan of anime. He's talked about how he wanted his suit in Black Panther to be inspired by like Dragon Ball Z and a lot of the characters that he loved as a kid. And I feel like you can see the Dragon Ball Z influence and a lot of the anime and the video game influence on this movie. And I think it's a really exciting kind of change of pace for the Rocky movies. I feel like especially that last fight between Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors at the end, I think is such an impressive new way to do a final fight in a Rocky movie that even though the plot leading up to it was kind of generic, I thought the style of the finale was so inventive and cool that I felt like it was worth the journey for me.
Yeah, I think it was very well directed, very interestingly directed, and I felt like almost in I'm looking back on it, I feel like the script almost wasn't worth the direction. I feel like it was I don't want to say style over substance, but it just felt like especially in Jonathan Major's character, it was just a lack of characterization. He was too nefarious to root for, but too sympathetic to root against. So by the time the final fight came around, I wasn't like actively rooting for Adonis to win. So it was just like as the fight was happening, I'm like, this all looks really cool. I just wish I was invested in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
that's
feel
kind of
that for sure.
where I was. But I'm excited to see what Michael B. Jordan directs in the future. I'm definitely going to be seeing his next movie in theaters, or where maybe it's a straight to streaming. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I left this more excited for Michael B. Jordan's second movie than I am for Creed 4. I
Yeah.
thought, oh, I can't wait to see what Michael B. Jordan does with a more open script, something you can really like start from scratch on more so than having to fit this very particular formula that I feel like he had to go to those beats of the traditional fight movie beats. And I
Yeah.
hope to see him be able to branch out from something so traditional in his next work.
Yeah. All right, and I watched a documentary on Hulu, and you watched a documentary on Amazon Prime. You watched Life Itself about famous critic Roger Ebert. So I've never seen it. I've heard a lot about it. People have talked about it for a while. What are your thoughts on Life Itself?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Roger Ebert. I watched him on TV all the time when I was a kid. He was one of the first people that I heard talk about movies in a more thoughtful way and kind of like a critical way. And I always look forward to seeing what he would think of all the new movies that came out, or go see something just because he said it was so good. And uh, that's just a couple. It's just a week or so ago, I think it was. It was the 10th anniversary of his passing away, so I decided to watch Life Itself on Amazon. And if you don't know, this is just a documentary, a biography documentary on Roger Ebert's life. He was this famous critic who worked here in Chicago and had this TV show on every week up at the movies, where he would review movies week to week with the new releases in theaters, whether it was the big blockbuster and then a handful of smaller releases. So he really pioneered, what you're watching now, the people getting around together and talking about whatever movies are out right now. I think you owe Roger Ebert a little bit of a debt if you're a fan of these types of podcasts and these types of shows. So I definitely recommend checking this out if you want to get a look at his life, some of his personal highs and lows and struggles, and what made him so unique as a critic. Not just someone that you like to see his movie takes on, but someone you got kind of like personally invested in. You were kind of like he was your cool movie uncle, that hung out and knew all the classics and would get really passionate about what he liked and didn't like. And I think that was something I loved about him too. He wasn't just one of those optimistic, I love everything that I watch types of people. And I feel like sometimes online, especially, you get a lot of critics that are like that, where they feel afraid to say something is not good, or they feel afraid to say something is good. They don't really want to like break away from the tradition. And Roger Ebert had no qualms with breaking away from tradition and praising something that didn't get good reviews, or you know tearing something down that got great reviews. And I like that about him a lot. So check out this documentary and go some appreciation for like good real movie criticism.
All right, yeah, it's one I've wanted to check out for a while. Now that I know it's on Amazon Prime, I'll definitely probably be checking it out. And I know definitely probably sounds like I'm not gonna watch it, but I will. All right, you want to move over to Netflix?
Let's do it, Joe. I think we
All
have a
right.
crossover here
Yeah,
finally.
there's a show we both watched. I don't know if you finished it or not. I didn't, but I'm definitely going to, and that is the show Beef, starring Stephen Yun and Ali Wong. And it basically these two the characters these two actors play get in a road rage incident, and it just starts essentially this massive beef between them. They don't like each other. They hate each other. They start doing stuff to each other. Essentially, it's very clear that they are just not happy in their lives, and this is just an outlet. They basically use each other as an outlet for their anger and frustration, as a way to just kind of get out their emotions. Tristan, did you finish it, and do you have overall thoughts on the season, or at least as far as you watched?
I haven't finished it yet, but I'm definitely gonna finish it. I was super impressed by this so far. Uh, I'm really liking the comedy of it, but I also think there's like an element of commentary here about like people and how we make scapegoats to kind of blame for our problems, and we'd rather like fight with people than come together and realize who our shared enemies must be, and some of our shared frustrations must be. Like you said, I think both of these people kind of hate their lives and are very unfulfilled in certain ways, and I think that adds a lot to the interesting drama here. But yeah, I love this a lot. I think it's funny, I think it's smart, I think it's like has this dark comedy edge to it. It's like a satire as well. I'm really liking this so far, and I can't wait to finish it out and see where it all goes from here.
Yeah, I agree. I know the creator or director or something says is a show that they think can go like two, three, 4 seasons. I'm only I think like halfway through the first season. I really don't know how I feel about that. I much unless they do like a true detective style where each season is a new set of characters. But I just don't really see this show being anything that season three finale. Am I still hooked? I don't know about that. I think it could be a show that if they continue, or like, oh man, this could have been a really great like mini series. But I don't know how I feel about continuation. But maybe I finished the first season and I'm like, oh no, I fully get this show now. Like I'm down for 8 seasons of this show.
Yeah, I'm curious. I didn't hear that quote, but it's a strange thought because this feels like something that would be an anthology show. It feels like it's going to build up to like a climax. It's like this one road rage incident kind of spirals into this building spiraling snowball thing that feels like it's going to
Yeah,
build up to a boom. So I wonder how do you draw that up for how many
yeah,
seasons?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm curious what the future of the show looks like because I'm thinking it's going to get some good reviews. I've seen a good amount of social media talk about it, so I'll be curious if Netflix gives it the axe in a week or if it gets the golden goose of Netflix and it's all of a sudden like an 8 season show.
Yeah, yeah, I agree there. All right, and on Netflix, you also watched ICU. Should I watch ICU? Should anyone watch ICU?
I See You. It's a film that just dropped on Netflix. It came out in 2019. Made some kind of festival runs and things like that, but I don't believe it ever got much of a wide release. So I kind of just like lost track of it. But I was really happy to check this one out. It just got dropped on Netflix, and a lot of people have been doing like reaction videos and things like that to it. So I decided I'd finally check it out. It's just like a short, 96-minute horror thriller. Just came out in 2019. Uh, it's about a young kid who gets kidnapped and is kind of like trying to break out of the place that he's kidnapped from. And you follow the detective trying to break him out, and you also kind of follow the kid who is stuck in this really dark room. And I think it's a great thriller. I really recommend it. I don't want to get too much into it because it's this kind of like twists that go along as it goes. It reminds me a lot of Saw, and the way that it's like following the case, but also following the people within, and you're also kind of having this, psychological journey about it too. And I definitely recommend watching it. It's only 96 minutes, I think, so 95 minutes. So it's a breezy little horror movie, and the ending is great. So I highly recommend checking it out because the last few minutes are just like really, really impressive and pay everything off too. If you like kind of those festival style horrors that are a bit slow but more on like the horror thriller side, I definitely think you recommend this because it has that thrilling look of kind of like Hush. If you watch Hush on Netflix, the movie about the woman you can't hear and there's a break in into her house, it reminds me a lot of that. So check this one out if you're a fan of Hush for sure. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I love Hush, so yeah, comparing it to Hush definitely makes me want to check it out. So I probably will, and that's on Netflix.
Yeah, and I want to also mention that Helen Hunt is the lead.
Okay.
Check her out because it's a great performance, and we're in that era where all of a sudden, maybe this could be like a comeback role. She all of a sudden becomes like a horror scream queen or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. I think that could be fun. All right, you ready to move over to some Paramount Plus news?
I'm ready. What do we got,
All
Joe?
right, I'll say this: Keeping Up with the Kardashians came out in 2007, and the original iteration of the show is gone, and now we have the Kardashians on Hulu. But it's essentially a continuation of the same show, and people are still trying to remake that show. And we have The Family Stallone on Paramount Plus, which feels like the next thing of like we're trying to basically remake Keeping Up with the Kardashians. We're trying to have our own Keeping Up with the Kardashians. That's how big of a juggernaut that show is. It came out when I was a freshman in high school, and I'm turning 30 this year. And and it's still going, and so it makes sense. And I watched the trailer, and I'm like, I like Sylvester Stallone. I don't know if I need a reality show about his family. No one. I follow some of his daughters on Instagram. I'm not gonna lie, but no one from his family other than him seems like anyone I'd care to tune into a reality show to watch. Like, if it was fully about him and it wasn't even called The Family Stallone and it was just a show following him around all the time, I might check it out. But there's going to be episodes where like half the episode is dedicated to going with his wife as she goes to get her nails done. And I'm like, I don't care about that. None that does not interest me. And so, Tristan, I don't know if you watched this trailer, but does a reality show about the life of Sylvester Stallone and his family interest you at all?
The answer to both of those questions is no, Joe. I'll have to say I did not watch the trailer, and I'm probably not going to check out the show. It reminds me of the Osbournes,
Yep.
the Ozzy Osbourne TV show. And similar thoughts where I said, you know what, I would watch a camera just follow Ozzy Osbourne around, like doing stuff, edit together like all the cool stuff Ozzy did in like a month into an episode. I'd watch that, but I don't really want to follow his family drama, the day to day of Ozzy Osbourne's family life, and I don't want to follow the day to day of the Stallone life either. Give me Stallone going to movie sets, making cameos, getting paid much, but not about his family. No.
Yeah. All right. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, a little bit of stream output problems, but I don't think it should be too bad. Nothing crazy. You should still be able to follow along. But yeah, I agree. I don't need a Sylvester Stallone family show. But moving over to a great reality show, and this one is on Freevee. And Tristan, I don't know if you've heard of this. I don't know if you've watched this. It's called Jury Duty, and it's amazing. Essentially, the plot of this show is this guy goes into jury duty, and he thinks it's regular old jury duty. But what he doesn't know is everything is scripted, and everyone is completely in on this reality show except him. He just thinks it's a documentary movie about following a jury. Um, and so there's just wild, crazy interactions, crazy things that happen. Everyone in this character is like an insane character that you immediately fall in love with. And I haven't told you the best part. One of the jury or alternate jurors is James Marsden, who's playing himself. And so this whole the first like because at first when I heard it, I thought every episode was going to be a different juror, or every episode was going to be like a different scenario where you watch them, and then at the end they reveal, oh, this is all a show. But this whole season, you're following this one guy. And like the first two episodes, it's James Marsden trying to get out of jury duty, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be like a distraction. Like you're not gonna want me here." And the judge is like, "I don't really recognize you, so you're." And he said one thing. He's like, the like main guy who doesn't realize this is all a setup looks at James Marsden. He's like, "Oh, I recognize you." And um, James Marsden lists off one of a bunch of his roles, and he lists off Sonic, and he's like, "You were in Sonic?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was in Sonic. Is this buddy comedy adventure?" He's like, the guy's like, "Yeah, I didn't watch it. I heard it was horrible." And and he was like, "Yeah, but you should check it out, see for yourself." So the guy watches it, and he comes back. He's like, "Yeah, I watched Sonic. That was a good movie." And but yeah, like they had to cast this so well because if you don't like the lead, you're not gonna like this show. And the lead is such a nice guy. Like you kind of feel bad for him in the setup because there's other people around him, and like these other jurors are pretending to have these problems, and he's trying to help them with it. And it's a great show if you're a fan of like Nathan For You or Nathan Fielder's latest show on I guess now Max, The Rehearsal. Basically, if you watch The Rehearsal and you like that, you definitely like Jury Duty, and that's on
I
Freevee.
I will definitely be checking this one out for sure, Joe. I'll get back to you within a couple of days about my thoughts on this one.
And not all the episodes are out. They release like a batch of episodes every Friday. So I'm patiently or impatiently waiting, I should say, for the next batch of episodes this Friday.
I can't wait. I'll be watching.
All right, yeah, it's a great show. Ready to move over to Disney Plus, where we got a massive amount of news.
Yeah, we got a whole stack of stuff here.
All right, so first bit of news, we got the Ahsoka trailer at Star Wars Celebration. Trailer looks great. Ahsoka looks great. It's same time period as Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. Looks like we got a shot recreation from the epilogue of Rebels. Uh, Kind of, what are your thoughts on this trailer? Are you excited for it? Does it make you more excited for the show? Excitement staying the same, or did you think the trailer sucks and you're out?
Yeah, I was interested in the show, but I was a bit hesitant because I wasn't quite sure how it was going to look visually, and I enjoyed the Ahsoka episode, the like standalone episode of Mandalorian, but I wasn't quite entirely sold on an entire season of her. But this trailer looks awesome. I love the cast of these new Rebels characters. I love being able to see Chopper and everybody again, and I think this is going to feel much more like an epilogue to final little pieces of the Rebels and Clone Wars universe and kind of putting them to a nice little satisfying rest here. And I can't wait to see it. We've got Thrawn teased the tip of our tongues in Mando this week, so I feel like he's going to be a pretty big player in this Ahsoka show. I can't wait to see how it all kind of comes together. But yeah, this trailer was really impressive. I love the way the lightsabers kind of like glow orange and not quite off red, and I can't wait to see the Jedi action. I feel like I've been craving some true like Jedi versus Sith action. It's been so long since you've had any of that, so I can't wait for the show. I'm really excited.
All right. Well, the characters aren't quite Sith, but they are Darksiders. And how do you feel about Mads Mikkelsen coming back? Or not Mads, sorry, Lars Mikkelsen coming back to reprise the role of Thrawn from Rebels.
I think it's a good pick. I think it's strange that they're like bringing some people back and not other people, but he does kind of look, the part. They kind of based Thrawn a bit off of his face, it seems like. So
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. I just feel like it's a weird choice to be like, okay, this one's coming back and this one's not coming back and this one's coming back and this one's not coming back. It's creating this like weird hodgepodge where I'm like struggling to see Ahsoka in the eyes of Rosario Dawson because like she's standing next to the real Katie Sackhoff from the real
Uh,
show, and the real Lars Mikkelsen is standing next to Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's playing a different character, and it's gonna be hard to kind of wrap
yeah.
my brain around
Yeah.
all of the math there, but I'll get used to it.
Yeah. I think over time as you watch it, it'll kind of gel better and fit better. But I feel like we're both excited for Ahsoka. That's coming August of 2024. Or 2023, sorry, 2023. We also had the trailer for season 2, Visions. And this one, where Vision season 1 was kind of non canon stories influenced by Star Wars from Japan. This one is going to be stories from all around the world. I think 6 of the 7 continents. The only continent not involved is, or the only continents not involved are Antarctica and Australia. All the other continents have a studio involved. But Tristan, did you watch this Vision season 2 trailer? Are you
Yeah, I watched
excited?
the Visions season 2 trailer. I'm really excited. I love the first season of Visions. I think it was such an exciting new direction for Star Wars, because it's not gonna really expand upon like the story, but it does kind of give you a new look at the lore and like what Star Wars means to people. And I thought it was cool to see the first season be kind of unified in that it was all anime from Japan. It felt like even though they were different studios, it all had like this similar vibe. So I'm curious to see how different this season feels because you have like a Wallace and Gromit style episode mixing with like a traditional anime episode, and it's gonna feel. I feel like there's gonna be a much wider range of animation styles and tones this season. So I'm curious how well it all meshes together. But yeah, otherwise I'm super excited for this, and I can't wait to see new looks at what the Force means to people and what Jedi and the Sith mean to people, and what the Star Wars universe can look like visually in a totally different style. That's what I love so much about this show.
Yeah. Yeah, we also got news that Tales of the Jedi is getting a season 2, and Dave Filoni said where he wrote season 1, he's bringing in more writers for season 2. So I'm excited if that potentially means a longer season, maybe more characters that they're going to focus on. Where season 1 was just Dooku and Ahsoka, maybe season 2 will have 3 or 4 Jedi that we focus on, and potentially have maybe instead of a 6 episode season, it'll be a 12 episode season or something like that, or maybe it'll be crossover episodes where it'll be an episode with we'll have some maybe Luke episodes and some Ben Solo episodes, but maybe some of the episodes will be both of them together. So I'm excited for that, intrigued by that. Do you have any thoughts on Tales of the Jedi getting more?
Yeah, I hope it jumps around the timeline, like you said. I've seen that time of Ben Solo's life too much, really. The most you've seen of that time is in the Lego movies, I guess. But I would like to see what they do with like the Tales of a Jedi. Doesn't have to be like set within essentially the prequel era, right? They can go anywhere they want across the entire Star Wars galaxy. They go back to the Dawn of the Jedi and set up the James Mangold movie somewhere in there. I would love to see how far along and move like go on that timeline. Maybe like beyond characters we even know. Introduce us to some new Jedi, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Maybe if they have, especially with like the Acolyte or something coming out. I believe
Mm-hmm.
this will probably come out potentially after the Acolyte, but I think it'd be kind of interesting if they have a live action show come out with a Jedi, or we didn't get much information on Skeleton Crew, but what if we see it was kind of revealed that Jude Law's character is going to be a Jedi? So what if we got a story about him before Order 66, like a story of him during the Clone Wars, or a story of him during the time of the original trilogy? Like, hey, where was he during the original trilogy? Why wasn't he off trying to fight Vader? Why wasn't he linking up with Obi-Wan and Yoda? So I think that could be interesting. Was he off in the unknown regions? Was he even a Jedi during the time of the original trilogy, or did he meet up with Ezra and he trained under Ezra and that's how he became a Jedi? Like, I think there's just a lot of different options. But I think I like the idea of Visions. I like the idea of Tales of the Jedi. I think if it were up to me, I would just say May 4th. You just alternate years, like odd years do Visions, even years do Tales of the Jedi, and just swap back and forth. So every other year, we get that. We get one, and I think that'd be the way to go. And I wouldn't even, you don't even have to do Tales of the Jedi every time. I'd be down for like Tales of the Sith, or Tales of the Bounty Hunters, or Tales of the
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorian. Like, just tales of the whatever they feel like they have in the best quality of content that they can do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they do with it.
All right, and then Bad Batch season three. They announced that it's gonna be Bad Batch season three is coming, and it's gonna be the final season, which I think makes sense. This isn't a story. As I was watching it, I'm like, is this really gonna go 5, 6 seasons? I feel like three is like the perfect amount for this story. It's very localized, very kind of a small story.
Yeah, and I hadn't caught up on season two, and I was honestly like burning out a little bit on the show. But knowing that there's only one season after it, that they're gonna wrap things up and give us an ending, I'm gonna power through and definitely be able to catch up and watch the season with you.
All right, sounds great. And also a little bit kind of tying into Disney Plus is we're getting a movie set in kind of the Mandalorian era, directed by Dave Filoni. It's going to be a theatrically released movie. And the Hollywood Reporter released today that Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to get the Ray focused movie in 2025 and the Dave Filoni movie the year after in 2026. So we could potentially only be 3.5 years away from this movie coming out. Do you think this will be kind of the end of it, and it's like, okay, no more Ahsoka after this, no more Mandalorian, or do you think it's going to be kind of like the Avengers, where this is the big, like Kathleen Kennedy said, big climactic event, but we could also have seasons of shows come out after that movie? Because what if this movie comes out, big critical hit, you know, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, critics and audience. It's the type of movie they write it in a way that Kathleen Kennedy said they're bringing the crawl back. Hey, you don't need to watch any of these shows to fully understand this movie. Obviously, there's going to be small moments and character interactions that if you haven't watched the show, maybe you don't fully appreciate the moment, but you still understand everything that's going on. And it's top three highest grossing movie of that year, just a big smash success. Is Lucasfilm going to look around and say, oh, we're fine continuing these stories on television, or are they going to say, like, hey, let's just put a kibosh on all these shows because we're going to just keep cranking this story out as movies?
Yeah, I was at first thinking, oh, this is gonna be like the finale of Mando. They're gonna build up these couple of shows for a couple of seasons, and then they're gonna give us this big grand finale. And I feel like that's kind of what they're gonna do. They're gonna really sell this as the finale, the same way like the Avengers Endgame was sold as like, oh, here's kind of the finale of the Avengers, but it's not the end of Star Wars, right?
Yeah,
Like you're gonna get more after that. They may will probably bring back Din and bring back the Mandalorian, but by that point, what Mando's probably on like it's going into his fifth season, even.
yeah,
So I feel like we're maybe at a point where they don't really have much more story wise to be saying with Mandalorian because they're already at a point where I'm starting to wonder, like, okay, can we get the story moving? Like, something gonna happen
yeah,
because we're sitting around a lot, but I think that they're probably gonna it's gonna be huge, and then you're gonna also want to go back and watch whatever the next season Amanda was after this because that movie was just so good.
yeah, yeah. I understand that. I get that. All right. And so, speaking of non Mandalorians, something you watched, uh, well, actually, speaking of the Avengers, something you watched was the Jeremy Renner interview. Was it as cringy as the trailer made it look? Was his conversation about Diane Sawyer about his plow accident?
It was not as cringy. It was definitely like about as TV generic as the trailer makes it out to be, but it was definitely moving to hear the story in such detail because you read the articles and you can hear it from that perspective, but when you see the people who found him talk about his skull was coming out of his head and all the he talks about it was in his last moments and he was using his last bits of energy moment, and hearing those stories of being there in the moment and how terrifying it was really gives you the reality check of how bad that really was and how close he really came to not making it out of this accident. And I feel like this was definitely an interview that was worth watching, especially if you are a fan of Jeremy Renner, because you get a good look at his struggle and his rehabilitation journey. Like you can see photos on Instagram, but when you see him like really having to push himself and hitting that breaking point and having to keep going, like it's definitely an inspirational story and someone that could have easily given up and probably had enough money to just kind of like get himself to a point where he can function slightly, and then that's it. But he wanted to push himself. He was able to show up. I think it was on Jimmy Kimmel. He promoted this by, he walked up onto the stage and he was proud of himself because he said, I was able to walk onto the stage today, and he was really proud of that. So you get an appreciation of that journey, and also just like the harrowing terror of that accident in this interview for sure.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't as weird and cringy as it looked based on the trailer, because that almost, I don't know how that went through all of the people that it had to get through before it got to our eyes, but it looked very bad.
And
Um,
yeah, it definitely makes me feel good for Jeremy Renner because he's doing so well,
yeah,
and I'm glad that he's recovering and that he's able to be with his family.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's always good. All right, you ready to talk about some spies?
I am. Give me some news, Joe.
All right. Well, it's not news. It's a show we both watched, and it's Mandalorian, Chapter 23, The Spies. It dropped today. You and I watched it. It released during Celebration. A lot of massive Star Wars fans got to watch it, and so a little bit of news, a little bit of rumors, kind of leaks came through over the last couple days. So I had a rough idea of what this episode was about, and I think it delivered. There's a moment that I've talked about on here, hinted at, as far as like there's going to be a moment towards the end of the season that got leaked, and it's going to be controversial. And if they pull it off, I think it'll be funny, it'll be cute, and people are going to like it. If they don't pull it off, I could see it being the point where a lot of people just stop watching this show. And that moment was Grogu getting in the IG, I guess now 12 suit, mech suit, and piloting it around and driving it around. I think they pulled it off, in my opinion. I enjoy it. I think it works. Like as it showed up when Grief was delivering it, I was like, you know what? I think part of my problem with this, of why I think it maybe wouldn't have worked, is the development of Grogu over this season. Where I think if they gave him this suit at the end of season 2, I'm like, I don't buy this. But I think they've shown him, like in his kind of pellet fight with Ragnar and some of the other moments where he has shown some agency, where Din fell and he had to go to Bo Katan and get help and get in the ship and go basically as best as he could tell Bo, hey, we got to go back because I need your help rescuing Din. I think they've shown him have enough agency and enough awareness going on that I buy him being able to pilot this mech suit. And as soon as he got in it, I was like, I need him to mess up a little bit. I need him to not be able to be like an amazing at maneuvering this mech suit. He immediately crashed into a wall, and I'm like, I'm in. I buy it. This is great. Um, the spamming of the yes and no buttons I loved. But as far as the actual plot, where you open and you basically finding the beginnings of the Empire reforming, um, I think that's great. I think it's reminiscent of Andor, and then leading all the way up to these Mandalorian factions coming together to go back to Mandalore, only to find out it is now an Imperial base. But that's kind of the general gist of the episode. Tristan, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I liked the opening sequence, especially. We're seeing that these fragmented Empire leaders are actually not as fragmented as we thought they were, and I think that it further return of Palpatine as well, and also kind of this power vacuum that opened up when the Empire fell. But I also think it parallels well to the rest of the episode. Like these fractured Mandalorians are also having to kind of like put their petty grievances aside because they all kind of want to be the king of Mandalore, right? You have all of the people who think they know what's best for Mandalore, what it means to be a real Mandalorian, and they're all going to kind of have to put that aside to fight for Mandalore. And I think the fact that they all put the rivets aside and they came back to Mandalore and found that it had been overtaken by the Empire the whole time. They didn't even know. I feel like that also parallels this opening scene because they're putting the differences aside, thinking that it's going to be for the greater good of them, that they're going to come out on top. And in the end, the Palpatine was there the whole time, and they were playing right into his hands, really. So I feel like these scenes parallel themselves in a really interesting way that I think made this episode work pretty well. And yeah, I'm interested in the Grogu mech suit because it's a choice. And I feel like I may have not made that choice myself. Like I feel like if you built up Grogu and his force abilities and his independence so well, it feels like a bit of a step back to then put him like in a suit rather than figure out a way to make him like independently powerful, you know. But it looks fun. It looks cool. I like the yes and no button spamming. I think it's funny, you know. And I'm excited to see how they like have him use this in action once they get into like the way this story is going. It's obviously building up to like huge conflict for Mandalore, right? So I can't wait to see Grogu in that conflict, fighting side by side with Din and Bo-Katan. It's going to be fun for the action sequences for sure.
Yeah. All right. What were your thoughts on the death of Paz Vizsla going out one last time, saying this is the way?
I'm glad to see there's some consequences for characters. It's kind of cool, you know, that this character's been here for a long time. He's been in a, I'm not, he was definitely in Rebels. I believe he was in Clone Wars as well, but he's been around the
No,
Star Wars
that's
world.
Paz Vizsla. He just showed up for the first time in Mandalorian. He's never been in anything else
Oh, am I
before.
confusing him with a
His
previous Vizsla?
Yeah, there was Pre Vizsla who was in Clone Wars, who is an ancestor of his. We don't fully know how they were related, but there is a Pre Vizsla where this is
I see
Paz
that. I
Vizsla.
was confused. I was thinking they're both same person for this episode, but
No.
uh, cool. You know, I'm not. I don't have many thoughts now because it was not the scene that I thought it was. But uh, you know, this is the way. You know, I think that he fought for his son in a couple episodes ago, and I feel like I said, everybody has their own ideas of what it means to be a Mandalore. Everybody has their own ideas of what the way means, but he went down like a badass. So you know, good for him.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm excited. Did you catch the couple of sequel trilogy connections?
Give me and feed me, Joe. Feed me the
Well,
connections.
obviously you have the Praetorian Guards.
The references to the great scene from Last Jedi.
Yeah. Which is how Paz Vizsla went out. There's Project Necromancer, um, which was referenced, I believe, by Moff Gideon. We fully don't know what that is, but it leans heavily to potentially how Palpatine was resurrected, but we
And that's
don't
how
know
I
that for
feel.
sure. But that's definitely what they're implying. But also in the Shadow Council, I believe it was called, there was a character named Brendel Hux, who is a big character in the books, especially the post Return of the Jedi books. And Brendel Hux is actually the father of General Armitage Hux, which is one of is Donald Gleason's character in the sequel trilogy, and he was actually played by Brian Gleason, Donald Gleason's brother. So
I
nice
don't.
connect.
I definitely noticed that. I didn't necessarily notice that it was the character from the books, but I was like, oh, that must be, you know, someone related to someone from from that same family. But that's definitely a cool
Yeah,
connection.
yeah, it's his.
I'm looking forward to like as they're getting closer to closer because it feels like they're sprinkling more and more sequel trilogy stuff in there. So I feel like they're at that point now where they're starting to connect us to a lot of those sequel trilogy questions, and they're teasing Thrawn, they're teasing Snoke and the Emperor. I'm really curious how all that's going to come together because it seems like it's building up towards some pretty interesting reveals that they have up their sleeve. You know,
Yeah.
because a lot of that stuff, like mentioning Predator Necromancer a couple of times already, and that feels like you don't throw that in for no reason. You throw that in because you know what it means, and you're gonna at some point reveal what it means. You know.
All right, and one final question for you as far as this episode goes. This episode was titled "The Spies." Now, obviously, we have the one character who was in the previous season where it was that whole or previous episode where the whole episode was kind of dedicated to the underworkings of the Empire with Dr. Pershing and that woman getting Dr. Pershing to give him all of his cloning information and all of the technology he would need for cloning. And that's really the only other spy. But the episode wasn't called The Spy, it was called The Spy. So who is the other spy in this episode? I have my theory, but I wonder if you have a theory as well.
Yeah, because my take on the title of the spies, because it drops like after that big opening sequence with the empires. So I thought the spies are essentially all of these different various empire factions who are all kind of spying on each other, all kind of vying for their own plans and their own details and all these underworkings. And I feel like Thrawn is ultimately kind of a spy too, who's hiding in the background of the scene. He's not there, but his eyes and ears are there. His right hand man, I believe, his name is Peloton or something like that.
Paleon.
It was kind of like Thrawn's friend, Thrawn's like advisor, his right hand man, and he was one among these like faction leaders. You know, so I feel like Thrawn and also the Empire in a way are kind of the spies that are kind of lingering in the background of the scene. They're not there, but they're there. You know, they're manipulating these events to their own whims.
Yeah. All right. I have a theory as well, and it's the character that for multiple seasons now they've talked about getting to this one place, and right before they get to this one place, they're like, actually, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And also, this same character helped bring all of these characters together, these multiple factions, and basically led them to their doom right into the arms of the Empire. And also, their helmet seemed to very much match Moff Gideon's helmet with having horn spikes. My prediction will be revealed in the finale is that the armorer is the spy, and the armorer has been in cahoots with the Emperor and Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon, this whole oh my god, why I didn't know all of these factions were gonna be here, was him playing it up, and I don't know essentially what the armor's end game is. Maybe it's protection. Maybe it's similar to. I'm blanking on the character's name, but essentially, my theory is she's working with Moff Gideon to like, hey, I'll help you, but I want the dark saber. Like I know you're like playing for the dark saber, but essentially like it's kind of like if I help you, I want the dark saber. Is my theory on what's happening, and she wants Bo-Katan to lose hard in front of everybody, in front of all of the Mandalorians. So basically, to just kill any chance she has of leading.
I definitely think the armorer has ulterior motives for sure. Because her conversation a couple episodes ago with Bo-Katan, where she was like, "Oh, you can take your helmet off. It's all good, and
Yeah,
I want you to be our you know our courier in the middle, who's gonna send our messages between us and all these other variations of the Mandalorians." That felt like a weird
yeah,
conversation where she was manipulating her more than like, bring her into the fold. So I think the armor as a spy is definitely a really good possibility. Whether she's working directly for Moff Gideon or whether they both have like a shared motivation and they're gonna kind of come together for this to take down who they both think is a bad leader of Mandalore. I
yeah.
think that could be a good take too. But yeah, I'm thinking the armor is a good call for the spy.
And then so I'm thinking the armor's my other prediction for the finale is I think Bo Katan dies in the finale. I think like if you look at her life goal and her life mission is to get the Mandalorians to work together, and I think she's gonna die seeing that the Mandalorians are finally ready to work together, and so she can die a somewhat peaceful death. And I think the armor is out because everyone looks at her and is basically like, "You betrayed us. You're a traitor," and Bo Katan's dead, and pretty much I think all eyes of the Mandalorians are going to pivot to Din, who I think potentially in the finale is going to get back the dark saber, and it's going to be more like, okay, I gave it to her because I thought she was supposed to lead, but now I saw how she led, and she didn't need to necessarily live by the old ways. So I think I wouldn't be surprised. Final shot is Din taking off his helmet and lifting up the dark saber, and all of the Mandalorians like kind of symbolically agreeing to follow him.
I think that would be a good call. I think her dying is definitely a good prediction as well because I'm on that side too. I'm not quite 100% convinced, but after this episode, I'm more convinced because she kind of had like a heartfelt kind of like conversation where she kind of like talked about her past and her own journey and that kind of thing. And usually when a character has a moment where they
Yeah,
sit down and talk about how far they've come and how much they've changed and all of that stuff, that might be a sign that their end is nigh. She essentially sat down and said, "Look, my character arc is complete." You know,
yeah,
uh, I just want to see the Mandalorians come together, and
yeah.
uh, I think so. Her going out next episode, I feel like is a good call.
And then I don't remember exact and had a more poetic way to phrase it, but he's basically like, "Hey, I'm gonna follow you until you die."
Hmm.
Essentially, what he said. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, I've had thoughts that she was gonna die, but that like partially confirms more for me that. And with him getting captured at the end, I would not be surprised as part of that rescue mission. Bo Katan dies, and Din's like, and sees, basically fights off Gideon or fights off maybe the armor. Maybe that it's like kind of a co reveal of the armor's the one that kills Bo Katan, and it's somewhat in front of the other Mandalorians. And that's when Din is like, realizes she was the spy, she's the one that betrayed them, and so Din takes out the armor, wields the dark saber, and that's the final of the episode. Because you could say, oh well, isn't that the same as how season 2 ended? But I would say it's slightly different because Din had the dark saber in a room with 3 other Mandalorians, and basically none of them viewed him as a Mandalorian, so it didn't really matter. And now he could be wielding the dark saber, winning it in front of a fucking field of Mandalorians, where it's like very clear, like okay, on Mandalore as well, where it's
Hmm.
like very clear moving forward, like he is without a doubt the leader of Mandalore. And
I have
we also have the
I
Mythosaur in play too. He could be riding the Mythosaur doing it.
I have two final things. I have one is a prediction based on your prediction here, but I am going to swap it up a little bit
Okay.
because I think where ultimately Bo-Katan is going to win, but she's going to be so damaged and incapacitated that she's probably not going to make it afterwards. And Din is going to get the dark saber, but the rules of Mandalore say that you have to defeat the holder in combat if you want to be the true leader of Mandalore. So in a heartfelt tearjerker, Din's gonna have to put down Bo-Katan and then grab the dark saber and declare himself the king of Mandalore and the ruler of Mandalore. And it's gonna be the moment where she essentially like hands in the blaster and says like, "Do it," you know.
Yeah, I can see that. You know. So my
And my final thought
okay.
is that last season in season two, we got to this point we are at right here, and we've been kind of wandering around a little bit for the whole season, meeting some new characters, meeting some old characters, and we were like, you know what? As long as it all comes together in the finale, it'll be worth it. And then it pretty much did. It came together in a really emotional and satisfying finale with a lot of cool plot twists and obviously exciting cameo that worked for a lot of people and was a really undeniably forward thinking effects and all of that. And I left season two feeling like, you know what, we wandered around a bit, but the finale was awesome. And then by the first episode of season three, like that whole finale is essentially like retconned out of happening. Like Grogu's back, and now Moff Gideon's back too. He's just kind of back,
Mm-hmm.
and none of the conflict that really finale ended up actually mattering much. So I'm going into this finale very cautious because even if it's great, how do I know they're not going to do a spin-off that undoes half the great parts?
Yeah. The one thing I will say is the thought I've been having, and I could be proven to be right, I could easily be proven to be wrong. And I think it's that they made season one and two with a mentality of like, this may be all we get. So we got to basically have an ending for this story just in case, because I think they started filming season two before season one came out, and like obviously Disney Plus wasn't a thing. They could be like Disney Plus could crash and burn, so I think there could be like season one and season two go together, and then there's this weird disconnect between season two and season three. So I think when they were like, "Oh, well, okay, we do get to make more of this. We have to reevaluate our world, and now this is doing so well. We're gonna get to do spin-off shows and this, that, and the third, and now we're even gonna do a movie set in this kind of part of the universe." I think, if there's this disconnect between season three or season four, or something happens in Ahsoka that completely changes, or something happens in Skeleton Crew, I'll be right there with you. But I think when it's all said and done in 2007, 2008, or not 2027, 2028, I think we're just going to be looking at it and saying, like, oh, there was just this weird disconnect between season two and season three, because that's like going into season three is, well, I guess you could say Book of Boba Fett, as when they knew, like, oh no, they were basically going to have the budget and the ability to tell whatever story they wanted, instead of just like going in being like, we got to wrap this up with season two, because if season two could be all we ever get for this.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping that that was kind of just a fluke, and I don't really. It just makes me nervous to go into a finale knowing that even if it's cool, they might just kind of be like, I
Yeah.
actually never mind on a lot of the cooler parts. And this episode did the never minding. Like Moff Gideon is just kind of why he's back. He's just here again, you know?
Yeah.
Like
And
he's just back. It's like, kind of like Grogu. Grogu's just back. If you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, Grogu is just back with
mm-hmm.
no explanation.
No. Yeah, I agree. I understand that. You ready to move over to HBO Max?
I'm ready. We got a big chunk of HBO Max to talk about, Joe.
All,
I'm really hyped for the finale of Mando, though. It's going to be
yeah.
great to see, and I can't wait to see the Grogu suit in action. Give me some
Yeah.
Grogu Iron Man fights.
Do you think this is a thing where they give him the suit But then it's like almost like a Forrest Gump moment where like he goes in with the suit and you think it's gonna be a cool suit moment, but he just like uses the force and rips it apart and he just goes crazy and
See, that
just
would be awesome. I would be happy with that.
I think
I
that's
don't
a thing where like they feel like they had to build him a suit because they felt like he wasn't ready on his own, and then he's like, "No, I'm ready now." Like I could see a scenario where we have a flashback to Din being tied down and strapped down by these new clone troopers, and he's about to die, and it cuts back to flashback. Like you hear the clanking or something in the background, like maybe some kind of weapon that's going to kill Din. And that flashes back just like the clanking when he was having his suit built. Because remember, there's definitely something there of him having this chest plate that hasn't come into play yet. Like that's definitely going to come into play. The clanking of his chest, similar to the clanking when his chest plate got made, and it flashes back to him seeing Keller and Beck potentially get killed by clone troopers or something, and he wasn't strong enough to do something. And it's basically like you can tell, like I'm not letting that happen again, and he just does some crazy force move, just completely rips apart his mech suit, and then Din's helmet's off of him, and he saves Din, and Din just kind of looks at him, and Grogu says his first words, "This is the way."
You're painting a cool scene. I definitely think that we're gonna see Ahmed Best's character at some point in this
Yeah,
finale because we had this kind of like essentially a cliffhanger of like, oh, I'm gonna go take you to my friends, and they're flying off into the
yeah,
clouds, and then nothing since. We got, and I think we're gonna get an answer to
yeah,
where they went and exactly what happened to Grogu after that because we still don't really know how he ended up in the hands of the Empire, right?
yeah.
And
No, we
so
don't. Yeah,
I feel like we got to get an answer to that question this season. Otherwise, they're just dangling it for like so long.
yeah,
Come on, give us
yeah,
something. It'll
yeah,
probably come in a spin-off series about, some other random character. In
yeah.
the Ahsoka show, they'll have an episode. It's all about Grogu.
Mm.
No Ahsoka, and the whole episode will just be Grogu during, the Clone Wars. That'll be the whole episode.
It'll actually be a Visions episode or episode of Visions where you don't think it's canon, but then it's just an episode of Keller and Beck um, saving Grogu, and they're like, yeah, this one's canon. This is actually how it happened. A studio pitched us the idea, and we're like, that works. That makes sense. We just threw it in Visions.
The
All right.
canon explanation is actually within that Studio Ghibli
Yeah.
Grogu short. You just gotta really pay
It was
attention.
Dust Bunnies, yeah. All right, you ready to talk about some HBO Max, actually Max
I'm
now?
ready.
All right, so basically, if you don't know, HBO Max and Discovery Plus are merging into one, and this is their new plan. You have Max Ad Light, which is going to be $9.99 a month or $9.99.99 a year, and you'll be able to have two concurrent streams, 1080p resolution, no offline downloads, 5.1 surround sound quality. Then you have Max ad free, $15.99 a month or $149.99 a year. Two concurrent streams, 1080p HD, up to 30 offline downloads, 5.1 surround sound quality, or Max Ultimate ad free, $19.99 a month or $199.99 a year. Four concurrent streams, up to 4K Ultra HD resolution, 100 offline downloads, and Dolby Atmos sound quality. I feel like well, maybe not you, but me and most other people are probably just going to go for the $15.99 a month stream.
I'm probably gonna up myself. I got my 4K TV. I got my Dolby Atmos set up. Why not pay my $20? I could go for the 4K stream. I could get
Yeah.
myself some Dolby Atmos.
All right, Richie Rich. We also have a fair bit of news, actually. Let me switch over here. This is a waste of time. Uh, Go over to the HBO Max subreddit where I get all of my news.
We got a whole bunch of like, or should I say Max now? I'm gonna have to get
Yeah,
used to that.
yeah. It's gonna take me a while to get used to saying Max. Harry Potter TV show adaptation officially ordered at Max. I'm not gonna lie. I think J.K. Rowling completely has tainted the series. Would not. I'll honestly be shocked if we get through the last few books. I would not be surprised if they do like the first three seasons. The ratings are horrible. No one cares. People are like, I'll just stick to the movies, and we really don't get the last few books.
Yeah, I have not a lot of interest. I mean, I loved Harry Potter as a kid, but between the J.K. Rowling political side of it all, it was kind of weird to watch it, and I'm not sure who would be joining in this cast because I feel like anyone who says yes to this is going to have to face some public scrutiny and answer some questions on the press tour, you know, and it's going to be weird if they don't address that because HBO Max refused to comment on that during this stream. So it's kind of how is that just going to not be talked
Mm,
about for this
yeah.
multiple season run? You know, it's going to
Yeah.
come up eventually. You guys can't just ignore it forever.
Yep. All right, and we also have a Game of Thrones prequel series, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight, ordered at, I guess, well, HBO, but it's also going to be on Max as well.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
based off of a pretty short
yeah,
book from George R. R. Martin, but a really great one. It's his prequel set just a couple
yeah,
of like a one or two generations ahead of the Game of Thrones
yeah,
generation, so it's much much closer than House of the Dragon.
yeah,
So if you're watching House of the Dragon and you were like, but I wish this was more connected to the Game of Thrones that I know, this looks like it's going to be that, and it's also a very short uh story, so I wouldn't imagine it's more than a couple of seasons.
yeah. This is what they have. It says it's going to follow the adventures of Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk, and a young Aegon the fifth Targaryen egg, 90 years prior to the events of Song and Ice and Fire. And it says, a century before the events of Game of Thrones, two unlikely heroes wandered Westeros. A young, naive, but courageous knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, and his diminutive squire Egg. Set in an age when the Targaryen line still holds the Iron Throne and the memory of the last dragon has not yet passed from living memory, great destinies, powerful foes, and dangerous exploits all await these improbable and incomparable friends. So yeah, sounds like it's gonna be a lot more focused of a show. It's really just gonna focus on these two, maybe a few scenes here and there of other characters, but I feel like these two are really gonna drive the show.
Yeah, that was what I liked a lot about the book. It was very focused and it added to this stories of these families a bit because these are like people who end up having kind of influential parts on the lore of the Westeros, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
people of Westeros. But I definitely am looking forward to this. And I was thinking this is when they first announced that Game of Thrones was going to get a prequel series. This was what I thought they were going to do. So now they're getting to it.
Yeah. All right. We also have a trailer for True Detective Night Country. It's gonna be a True Detective spin-off series about with starring Jodie Foster, essentially up north where it's night, or well, it's not night, but it's dark, pretty all day, all night, and solving crime up there. Seems interesting. If you're a True Detective fan, I would definitely check it out. It looks good enough, I guess. I've never actually watched True Detective. I'm one of those few. We're few, but we're proud.
Yeah, I love the first couple seasons. I love the first season of True Detective, and I also really like the third season. So I'm hoping that this will be a good one for the series.
Yeah. All right, and we also have Matt Reeves and his spinoff of the Batman, The Penguin, is now in production. They released a trailer. Nothing crazy. Basically, if you watch the Batman, you kind of know what you're in for. Looks good. I'm definitely interested. Gonna watch it. It wasn't, obviously they're still filming, so there was nothing crazy about this trailer. It was more just, I feel like today for Max was a lot of just like, hey, don't not subscribe to us. We're still what you know. We're just have a different title change and maybe different prices, but
Hmm.
we're still the same brand that you know, which makes no sense of why they would change their name. But that felt like a lot of what today was saying like, hey, we haven't really changed. We just changed our name.
Yeah, do we roast them yet for that name being stupid? Because that name is stupid for sure.
Yeah, HBO, that's a brand everyone knows. People talk about it's related, connected to prestige television. We're going to drop that. We're just going to call ourselves Max, which is something I called a couple months ago when they released a trailer and I saw at the end it said Max Original, not HBO Max Original. I was like, that's interesting. I wonder if they're going to drop the HBO when they merge with Discovery Plus. And here we are. They've merged with Discovery Plus and they're calling themselves Max, which sounds
It's a
horrible.
strange choice, you know, because like you said, HBO comes with such prestige, and Succession's on right now. Barry's starting next week. Like the name of HBO, I feel like is hand in hand with prestige dramas, and it's weird that they would just drop that name for something that means nothing. Like the name Max could be anything. It could
Mm,
be a streaming platform for anything. You know,
yeah,
there's no like immediate recognition of what that means and what that gives you. You know, it's just a
yeah,
weird choice.
yeah. All right. Lesser news Shazam Fury of the Gods is coming May 23rd to Max. I'm going to continue to not watch that movie. Nothing about it looks interesting to me.
I'll
Apparently,
watch it on streaming. I didn't watch it in theaters because I
yeah.
couldn't get myself to cross that. You know, I was like, you know what, I'm a DC fan, but not that much of a DC fan.
Yeah.
Enough of one to watch it on HBO Max though.
Yeah. Conjuring TV series in development at HBO Max. I think this could actually be decent. There's not a lot of horror television series out there, so I think something like The Conjuring kind of lends itself to um, a series, especially if you don't try to set it in the same world as the movies and you just recast the Warrens and have them. It's essentially like X Files for the most part, but
Hmm.
just more adult horror. I think that'd be the way to go.
I wonder if you bring back Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, give them the leads. I
Yeah, I mean that's an
think
option.
Wilson, but I'm excited for it though. I like you said, not a ton of horror on TV, and I enjoy the Conjuring movies, so it'll be cool to see that universe kind of brought to life again.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's possible. We got a horrible animated show called Gremlins: Secrets of the Mogwai, where we got Gizmo again, and nothing about it gave me any reason to watch it. So I'm not gonna watch it. If you ask me to watch
Nice.
it, the show better be like a 10 out of 10 because it looks horrible.
Not watching it.
Yeah. Did you watch the trailer for the Regime?
The regime I did watch. It looks interesting. It's got this kind of like tense, almost like Veep energy, but like more of a political thriller, I guess. Like she has that edge of like a really stern, cold kind of politician, but she's thrown into like this actual political kind of thrill ride that looks pretty interesting. So I'm gonna check that one out probably when it comes out.
All right. And then the last bit of news is one I'm sure you're hyped about. New Big Bang Theory spinoff in development at Max. Because
Uh,
that's what gets people excited is more Big Bang Theory.
look, I mean, I think Young Sheldon does great on the ratings. People are out there watching it. I don't know these people, but that's what
Yeah.
happens when you start merging everything into one giant big thing. You're gonna have stuff that caters to the random people that you don't even know exist that are out there watching Big Bang Theory spinoffs.
Yeah. Big Bang Theory aired for 12 seasons. I don't know a single person that watched it. So, but
It
they're out
won
there.
lots of Emmys too. It won
Yeah.
like so many Emmys.
Yeah. Somehow, some way.
People watch it.
All right. I think that wraps up my HBO Max news speed run.
There's a great trailer out for The Sympathizer, the Robert Downey Jr. Co-led Korean thriller from
Yeah.
HBO that's coming out pretty soon. I don't even know if they're calling it an HBO Max or what, but it's coming out and it looks really good. So check out that trailer too.
All right. So, um, yeah, the last bit of related to HBO Max. Oh, House of the Dragon season 2 has started production, and I know you binge watched Succession. Are you completely caught up?
I am completely caught up, and I'm really glad that I did catch up because this most recent episode was just so ridiculously good. Like one of the better episodes of TV that I've seen in a long time, and I feel like it really gets to that emotional core of these characters. And I feel like the fact that I binged it so hard made this episode feel like this kind of like emotional punch. Right at the end of the binge, you get to this episode and you're like, oh god, and I felt the episode for sure. And if you haven't watched Succession yet, honestly, like this episode should convince you to watch it because it's just that good. And I feel like it really cuts to the core of these characters and it cuts to the core of like the humanity that's lost in a person when you decide to pursue wealth to this level. Like you're not allowed to mourn, you're not allowed to like have grief, you're not allowed to be shocked, you're not allowed to be sad, you're not allowed to be anything. You have to just be this calculating machine where as soon as something bad in your life happens, your first thought has to be, how is this going to affect my stock price? And that is just like a loss of humanity that is just so sad to see in a person that it's just shocking. And this episode really nailed that so well. And I can't wait to see how the season plays out because there's, I think, like 7 episodes left or so. And then the series is over with. And if this is the height that this season's going to go for, I cannot wait to see how they pull the rest of this off.
All right. Yeah, it's one of those shows. There's a lot of shows out there that get great reviews, and I'm sit there going, I need to watch this show, but there's just so many of them that it's like one of those ones I'd like to say, hey, I'm gonna get to this, but it's just I got a lot going on and everything. So, am I gonna get to it? I'm gonna be honest and say probably not, but I would like to one day.
One day.
One day.
And it's
Because you,
definitely worth the binge, because I binged through it really quickly, and it's such an intense, but like really funny watch that it's a binge for sure. And I was so happy I could binge through it all because I didn't have to wait between seasons, didn't have to wait between episodes. I was able to just, boom, and now I don't know how I'm gonna wait till next Sunday.
All right. You ready to talk about our final topic of the day?
I'm ready. What do we got, Joe?
All right, final topic of the day is who is our naming our MVP of the week. I think I have my nomination. I don't know if you have one, but I'm curious what you.
Give me your nomination, and then I will give you mine.
All right, my nomination for MVP of the week is Dave Filoni. We got him writing this or co-writing this episode of Mandalorian with Jon Favreau. We have him writing all of um, the Mandalorian, or not the Mandalorian. Sorry, we got him writing Ahsoka, directing Ahsoka. We also have the announcement that he has a movie coming out. No one, I think, even just a few years ago, would ever say like, "Oh, Dave Filoni, who's basically kind of the head of Star Wars creative in a way, is going to be writing and directing a Star Wars movie." And here he is. We normally, at least I like normally if we have the ability to give someone who's across multiple streaming services, but I don't really think there's anyone crossing multiple streaming services. But I believe Disney Plus. If I were to say what streaming service did the best this week, it would be Disney Plus, and I think a lot of that is because of him. So I think for me, my nomination would be Dave Filoni for all of his work on Star Wars this week.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Lucasfilm owes Dave Filoni a lot, and when you see the reception of Star Wars Celebration this week, I feel like 2 years ago that is not received so well. You know what? I feel like Dave Filoni's done so much work to like bring the brand of Star Wars back into a positive light that they could come back and announce a Ray movie, and they can come back and announce, he's getting his own movie. And even though like something like the Ray Skywalker movie is not playing on the streaming, I feel like you got to give Dave Filoni credit for that in a way too, because he helped the brand get to a point where they could do that. And I think if Mando wasn't received so well, they're not able to do that. So I've given the win to Dave Filoni too. That's my nomination. I feel like he's got so many wins on the streaming platform that you just got to give it to him. He had so much hitting this week, and it feels like he essentially had like a victory lap in Star Wars. He's the George Lucas of Star Wars right now. He's in all but name, I feel like the next Kathleen Kennedy, who's kind of like the overseer of where this thing goes. And I think he earned that with years and years and years of working as a Star Wars creative and by hand in hand with George Lucas. And yeah, now he is the lead of Star Wars now, so he got it.
All right, and with that, our MVP for the week of April 12th is Dave Filoni. And so, with that, before we close out, Tristan, I always end with a question for you. I watched a documentary about Brooke Shields. You watched a documentary about Roger Ebert, Life Itself. So, my question for you is, if you could have a documentary made about anyone who currently works in the entertainment industry or worked in the entertainment industry, who would you want to see a documentary about? As the technical
Tommy Wiseau,
Tommy
I got
Wiseau.
to get a Tommy Wiseau documentary. He has his follow up to The Room, is his second directed film coming out this week called Giant Shark, I believe, or maybe it's Big Shark. It's some kind of shark that is big and large and consuming the public. So check that one out. But I got to see the life of Tommy Wiseau. He's such an odd figure, and I feel like anytime I get him on camera, he says something interesting. So give me a look. Give me a look at that life.
All right, great pick. I like the pick, and apologies to everyone for some of the small technical difficulties. I feel like you were able to follow along, hopefully. And without further ado, goodbye.